103. Anarchism. Chalcedon Report number 57, May the 1st, 1970. One of the most logical expressions of the modern mentality is anarchism. In anarchism, the basic premises of the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, Kant, and religious modernism come to maturity and their logical conclusion. Not only is anarchism the most logical expression of the modern mind, but it is also its most psychopathic manifestation. In anarchism, the radical evil and sickness of the modern mind comes to focus. Let us examine some of the basic presuppositions of anarchism, which simply pushes the modern faith to its logical conclusion. First of all, anarchism denies the doctrine of original sin and holds to the natural goodness, or, at the least, the moral neutrality of man. The sin in the world is therefore not a product of man's fallen nature, but rather a product of an evil environment. If there is evil in man, the environment is responsible. As Herbert S. Gershman observed in The Surrealist Revolution in France, page 189, for Rousseau, man's desires, which are wicked, were instilled in him by society. For the Surrealists, man's desires, which are good in that their satisfaction will presumably make him happy, are regularly thwarted by society. In either case, society, the environment, or the state is guilty, not man. Therefore, make war on society and the state. The premise of all modern revolutions is here. The anarchists are most logical in their application of it. Since evil is in the environment, and man's strongest environment seems to be the state, free man totally by destroying the state totally. The logic of this position is so compelling to the modern humanistic mentality that even the total statists, the Marxists, justify their totalitarian state as the necessary means for eliminating the state. The second main premise of anarchism is its belief in the autonomy of man, his total independence of God and man. It is the heresy of absolute self-government. There must be no God, no church, no state, no family, no institution with any authority over man, because man is his own God, his own law and state. An interesting early expression of the anarchistic ideal is to be found in an early and seminal book, Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe. Still excellent reading. We are often told that Crusoe represented the expression of the spirit of private enterprise, of capitalism, turning a desolate island into an ordered world. There is more than a little truth to this opinion, but another strand of thought is also apparent. The most compelling fact about Defoe's day was the great wealth capitalism was bringing to the cities. One reason for the growth of and poverty in cities was the influx of the poor to the cities to get jobs in this area of wealth. A continual influx meant a continual new class of poor as the earlier arrivals gained status in the growing middle class. The slums, in brief, were a first station on the road up, and people crowded into them readily in hopes that their ride would be upwards. The city was thus a focal point of the new world of capitalism. Out of the confusion, crowding, and poverty of the city, capitalism was shaping an amazing new world. But Defoe chose a deserted island, a primitive and savage one, a condition of radical autonomy rather than the intense community of the city of his day. The element of anarchism was thus strongly present. The only other man in Crusoe's world was not a capitalist competitor, but a savage, to emphasize his autonomy and dominion. This is the world of the anarchist, a world, in effect, without other people. The problem of philosophy for the existentialist Sartre is not God, but other people. In No Exit, Sartre has Garcin declare, hell is other people. Levi, in Philosophy in the Modern World, page 420, observed that hell is other people for Sartre because, in his quaint universe of appropriation and domination, a kind of Hobbesian state of nature, where the stakes are not the externals of wealth and deference, but purely internal states of consciousness like nausea, shame, pride and alienation, all contact with the other implies a latent contest. Crusoe, at least, had a real island. The modern anarchist increasingly flies to a new island, his own inner world, one he trusts no man can invade. According to Gershwin, liberty to the surrealist has a pronounced negative aspect, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that it recalls the principles and goals of Reisman's inner-directed man. It seeks martyrdom and oracular revelation. At the same time, it denies the world and man's flesh and blood existence. Page 12. The real world is, after Kant, to be found in the mind and imagination of man and his autonomous reason. Living with the reality of the outer world is seen as compromise. The new absolute is the individual man. Page 132. For this autonomous man, it is a moral necessity to deny not only the claims of God, but the claims of law, society, the state, and the family. The attitude is, I am God, don't fence me in. With many hippies, there is a denial of cleanliness and of social graces as a means of denying any interdependence with other people. The family, because of its strong and God-given ties, is especially warred against, and a major hallmark of the anarchistic mentality is rebellion against the family. To cite a typical instance of this, a young man, infected by the anarchistic mentality, went out of his way to be offensive to his parents in appearance. Were they going to an important social function, he refused to cut his hair, wear clean clothes, or be other than a boor in his manners. Requests for compliance were treated as attempts to control him, but he felt entitled to take whatever he needed from them as his right. He married a girl of like anarchistic tendencies. On one occasion, his deliberately bad manners upset her, and she remarked about it. He turned on her in a screaming rage and slugged her. He was logical at last. His rights were total in his eyes, his freedom absolute, and the rights of the world to invade his absolute freedom were non-existent. He was, quote, resisting, end quote, an invasion. Precisely because he loved his wife as much as he was capable of loving anything, he resented her attempt to presume on that tie. He was, he declared, captain of his own soul, lord and general of his life, and no one had better try to dictate to him. In brief, like a good anarchist, he believed in autonomy. I am God, don't fence me in. Autonomous man indeed finds life with other people, and especially life with a loving family, to be hell. How can a man be his own God and his own world if other people make claims on him? People who have never heard the word anarchism today are deeply infected by it. A young father brutally beat his infant because she was crying. His excuse? She was bothering me with her crying. How dare anyone disturb our little gods? Another young man, whose mother had long walked in fear of his tantrums, turned on her when she asked when he would come home that night and slugged her. His excuse? She was always bugging me. How dare anyone limit his independence with a suggestion or even a question? I am God, don't fence me in. A third basic premise of anarchism is closely related to the second. It is the belief that the rational is the real. After Hegel, modern man has progressively remade the world after his own image in terms of his concepts of rationality. People well beyond the borders of formal Hegelianism are infected by this belief. To cite an example of this, a bestseller widely read by conservatives and liberals is The Peter Principle by Dr. Lawrence J. Peter and Raymond Hull. The Peter Principle is simply this. In a hierarchy, every employee tends to rise to his level of incompetence. In other words, every bureaucracy promotes a man until he reaches a point where he is no longer competent, and there he remains, so that all jobs are potentially held by incompetence. The beauty of this principle is that it is so rational, and therefore the appeal of the principle and the book. But is it true? Some years ago, on an isolated American Indian reservation, I saw in practice a decidedly different principle. The Indian agency superintendents gave their most competent employees poor or average ratings. This prevented promotion to another higher agency and kept them there, and enabled the superintendent to build up a better rating for himself. The incompetent men were given the highest ratings and promptly moved upward and out to another agency. Eventually, some of the competent men became discouraged and quit. The same is true of several corporations I checked on. Incompetent executives, who know only management and nothing about engineering, transfer men from plant to plant to prevent anyone from being around long enough to spot their ignorance. These executives regularly move from company to company to prevent anyone from detecting that they are, as executives, mainly paper shufflers and buck passers. The Peter Principle, however, appeals more to people than does the truth. It is more, quote, rational, end quote. Much of modern politics and economics rests on the same premise, that the rational is the real. In other words, man remakes the world in terms of his own supposedly creative word. A fourth premise of anarchism is its relativism. Since all objective law is denied, and God is rejected, every man is his own God and law, and no one law is binding on all men. Outside of man, no absolutes exist. The, quote, purpose, end quote, of art and music then becomes a desire to prove that it makes no difference what note is sounded, which colour or line is used, or which word follows another. Anarchism prevails in art and in science. The result, then, is the death of science, because objective meaning and purpose are dead. Gunter S. Stent in The Coming of the Golden Age, A View of the End of Progress, believes it is not only the death of science which lies ahead, but the gradual decay and death of mankind. Jerome Letvin, reviewing Stent's book in the March 1970 edition of Natural History, praised it, but added, "However, I am not convinced by his optimism. Sudden, rather than gradual death is more likely for an anarchistic world." The denial of law is the affirmation of death. The dead are insensitive to law. Maturity is not anarchism, the ability to live in independence from man and God, but rather to live in interdependence with others under God. Without God, men are soon dead, their culture and civilization in ruins. He that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. Proverbs chapter 8, verse 36. The love of death is deeply rooted in our age. Earlier, we cited the childish tantrums of the anarchistic mentality in reaction to normal claims on their lives. Not surprisingly, hysteria has been a major concern of psychology in the modern era. Dr. Ernst Kretschmer, in his study of hysteria, reflex and instinct, page 132, observed, "We can therefore sum up the situation in these words. Such hysterical persons are not weak-willed, but weak of purpose." Without God, meaning and purpose wane and disappear. Anarchistic man can only lash out hysterically at a world he never made and therefore hates. He destroys civilization as though civilization were the sinner rather than himself. Anarchistic man has no future. He cannot construct. He can only kill and die. Let the dead, therefore, bury the dead. The world is ours under God, to exercise dominion over it and to subdue it. Because God is sovereign, every day is the day of the Lord, and every year is Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. God only and always reigns.